At the age of 25, Diana found myself reflecting on a significant moment in my life that I believe serves as a cautionary tale for others. The experience, marked by a series of poor decisions, unfolded during a period when I was married to my husband, Paul, who was 28 at the time. We had been together for nearly 3 years and had celebrated our first wedding anniversary. Paul was everything I had ever hoped for, a dedicated worker, an excellent provider, and a loving partner who always made me feel cherished and secure. About a year into our marriage, Paul was required to travel out of town for a construction project that would keep him away for 3 weeks, a commitment that included 2 weekends. During this challenging time of separation, we made a concerted effort to stay connected through daily FaceTime calls and frequent text messages, both of which brought us some comfort amidst the loneliness we felt. On the first weekend of Paul's absence, 2 of my single girlfriends invited me to accompany them to a local club. Initially, I turned down their invitation, wanting to remain loyal to my husband. However, they were persistent, insisting that they needed a designated driver since they planned to enjoy a few drinks. After much deliberation, I finally acquiesced, though I chose not to inform my husband, my mother, or my older married sister, fully aware that they would disapprove of my decision. We arrived at the club around 10:30 p.m., where the atmosphere was lively, filled with people dancing and enjoying a night out. As my friends quickly became engrossed in the festivities, I opted to take a seat at a high-top table, observing the scene and trying to maintain some distance from the chaos unfolding around me. At one point during the night, my friends returned to the table with their dance partners to take a break and chat. It was then that a man, whom I'll refer to as Joe, joined us for conversation. Joe was a friend of one of the guys accompanying my friends. As the night progressed, my girlfriends became increasingly intoxicated, drawing attention to themselves with loud antics that drew stares from other patrons. Joe noticed my discomfort and offered to help get my friends to my car, generously suggesting that he could ride along to assist in dropping them off at their respective homes. Feeling grateful yet hesitant, I ultimately agreed to this arrangement, knowing it was not ideal. After dropping off my friends, I drove Joe to his apartment, where he suggested we continue our conversation, framing it as 2 friends enjoying each other's company. Initially, I hesitated, acutely aware of my commitment to my husband and the boundaries I was crossing. However, Joe insisted that it would be just for another 15 minutes. Reluctantly, I consented, feeling the weight of my internal conflict but hoping to keep things innocent. Once we were inside, we each grabbed a sparkling water and settled onto his couch. The conversation flowed easily at first, but it wasn't long before the tension shifted. Just minutes into our discussion, Joe leaned in and kissed me softly on the lips. In a matter of moments, the situation escalated beyond what I intended, leading us to become intimate within a mere 5 minutes. As reality set in following our encounter, a wave of guilt washed over me. I immediately recognized the severity of my actions and informed Joe that I could not see him again, as I was happily married and felt immense remorse for what had transpired. He expressed understanding and regret, acknowledging that he too had overstepped by engaging with another man's wife. We parted ways without exchanging any contact information, convinced that our paths were unlikely to cross in the sprawling city of Los Angeles, where we lived approximately 20 miles apart. I naively believed that I could brush this incident aside as a one-time lapse in judgment. However, a sinking feeling started to take root when my menstrual cycle was overdue. Days turned into a week, then 2 without any signs of my period arriving. When Paul returned home, we quickly resumed our loving relationship, but I carried the heavy burden of a secret, one that gnawed at me daily. If I were pregnant, there was no question that the child would belong to Joe, as he and I had not practiced safe measures while my husband and I always had. Desperate for clarity and support, I ventured to a local drugstore to purchase a home pregnancy test. My heart raced as I awaited the results, and my worst fears materialized when the test confirmed that I was pregnant with Joe's child. Overwhelmed with emotions and disgust at what I had done, I felt an urgent need to confide in someone who could provide guidance. I arranged a meeting with my mother and sister, hoping that sharing my dilemma would lead to sound advice. As I recounted the events that had occurred, their reactions were immediate and intense. Both expressed shock, disgust, and anger at my betrayal. They held a deep affection for Paul and struggled to comprehend why I would jeopardize our marriage in such a reckless manner. Their response only served to heighten my feelings of shame and regret, making me realize the profound impact of my choices. Our family was deeply rooted in Catholicism, and as such, we all held a strong commitment to our faith. Within this framework, infidelity was not just a breach of trust, it was seen as a grievous sin and an act of shame that carried heavy consequences. I was acutely aware that my actions would transform my status within my own family into that of an outcast. This realization weighed heavily on me. When I confided in my family about my intention to terminate my pregnancy, it was driven by an overwhelming fear of losing my husband. My plan was to go through with the termination during a time when my husband was away on one of his business trips, keeping the entire ordeal a secret and attempting to maintain our relationship as if nothing had changed. The reaction from my mother and sister was immediate and intense. They were staunchly against my decision, believing that honesty was paramount. They insisted that it was essential for me to come clean to my husband about what was happening. Their conviction was clear: if I did not disclose the truth within a mere 24 hours, they would take it upon themselves to confront him and reveal my secret. Adding to the emotional turmoil, they argued that undergoing a termination was not only morally reprehensible but also a decision that I would likely come to regret for the rest of my life. Deep down, I recognized the validity of their concerns. The conflict within me intensified, ultimately leading me to request my mother and sister's presence during the conversation with my husband. I believed their support would be crucial in navigating this painful discussion. They agreed, and the following day, we gathered in our apartment, filled with a mix of anxious anticipation and dread, as we awaited my husband's return from work. When he finally walked through the door, he greeted us with warmth, referring to us affectionately as his 3 favorite ladies, showering us with hugs and kisses. The sheer joy of the moment was overwhelming, and it brought tears to my eyes. However, he quickly noticed the tears in my eyes and the solemn expressions on the faces of my mother and sister. Concern etched into his features, he immediately inquired about what was wrong. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, I informed him that I had something very important to discuss, urging him to sit down. He complied, taking a seat across from me on the couch, his hands enveloping mine in a gesture of comfort. As I began to speak, the weight of my confession pressed heavily upon me. I braced myself for his reaction, anticipating anger and hurtful words. Surprisingly, he did not lash out. Instead, he released my hands and stood up, moving silently towards the kitchen counter where the stools were located. My mother and sister, caught in their own wave of emotion, were visibly in distress as I poured out my heart, begging for his forgiveness and uttering the familiar phrases that accompany such confessions. "I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, and I'll do anything for you." The silence that hung in the air deepened my sense of dread, as he remained fixated on the floor, tears cascading down his cheeks. In a moment of shared anguish, my mother and sister rose to embrace him, their own tears highlighting the emotional weight of the situation. I felt utterly wretched and filled with self-loathing for having put everyone in such a painful predicament. After a pause to gather himself, my husband excused himself to the bathroom, where I imagined he needed a moment to process the chaos swirling around us. He returned, having splashed water on his face and dried it with a towel, yet the atmosphere remained heavy with unspoken words. As he stepped back into the living room, I instinctively stood up, wanting to comfort him. However, he raised his palms gently, signaling me to stop. With a calm demeanor, he explained that he needed time alone to think through everything that had transpired. For the next few days, I clung desperately to my hope of reconciliation, attempting to coax him into opening up about his feelings, but he maintained an emotional silence that only deepened my despair. Ultimately, he packed a suitcase and left, responding to my inquiry about his destination with vague assurances that he would be in touch. I flooded his phone with messages, voicemails and texts brimming with sorrow and plea, expressing my deep remorse and my longing for him to embrace fatherhood. Unfortunately, my efforts went unanswered. A week later, I received a phone call from his attorney, shattering any remnants of hope I held. His attorney informed me in a detached manner that my husband was initiating divorce proceedings. The weight of this news hit me like a tidal wave, and I felt utterly devastated. Seeking solace, I turned to my mother and sister, who provided me with comfort but also made it abundantly clear that they stood firmly on my husband's side. Their support came with the caveat that they disapproved of my actions, even expressing willingness to testify on his behalf if it came to that during the trial. In the weeks that followed, I continued to reach out to my husband through calls and texts, pouring out my heart and pleading for one last opportunity to speak face to face. My efforts were met with silence. Eventually, he sent a message through his attorney, wishing me well and extending his regards for our unborn child, yet asserting his clear decision to move forward without me. The finality of his words crushed me, plunging me into a profound and deep depression that felt insurmountable. Approximately 2 months later, our lives took a significant turn as we all gathered in the courthouse for the hearing. This marked the first occasion I had seen my husband since he left, and the emotional weight of that moment overwhelmed me. As soon as our eyes met, tears streamed down my face uncontrollably. I felt an irresistible urge to rush toward him, desperate for a connection, a single moment that might alter the course of our situation, but my mother and sister intervened. They held me back gently, offering words of consolation, knowing how fragile I was at that moment. The hearing itself was brief and relatively straightforward due to the fact that I hadn't contested the divorce. We had very few assets to divide, which made the legal proceeding simpler. As we exited the courtroom, my heart ached with the desire to approach my husband once more, to perhaps engage in one last meaningful conversation. However, his attorney swiftly guided him toward a side exit that led into a meeting room, effectively separating us further. Fast forward 2 years, and my life has taken a different shape. I now reside with my parents, who have been a tremendous source of support as I navigate the challenges of raising my beautiful baby girl. Their unwavering love and encouragement have been crucial in my ability to deal with this tumultuous experience. Recently, I started a part-time job as a clerk at the local library, and I have plans to transition to a full-time position once my daughter is old enough to attend school. In contrast, my ex-husband has moved forward with his life and has found a new girlfriend. She is young, attractive, and comes from a wonderful family. Although I can sincerely say that I am happy for him, I cannot deny the deep sadness that lingers within me. Even with the joy my daughter brings into my life, there remains a significant void in my heart following the end of our marriage. After the divorce, I reached out to Joe, the father of my child, to inform him about my pregnancy. We underwent non-invasive prenatal testing, which confirmed his paternity. He agreed to provide child support and has consistently met his obligations. However, I do not harbor any romantic feelings toward him. Instead, I feel a sense of resentment toward the disruption he brought into what was once a beautiful life. About a week ago, I had an unexpected encounter at Walmart. While I was pushing my daughter in a shopping cart and turning the corner of an aisle, I came face to face with my ex-husband. The encounter caught me completely off guard, and I felt a tightening in my chest, as if I couldn't breathe. He greeted me with a simple, yet startling, hello. At that moment, my daughter, innocent and unburdened by the complexities of adult relationships, flashed a radiant smile and extended her tiny hand toward him while babbling cheerfully and showing him her toy. He responded warmly, saying, hello there, beautiful girl. How are you? Seeing the two of them together, even in that brief moment, filled me with a profound sense of sadness. I had always wished for him to be an active part of our child's life, but deep down, I understood that those dreams could never become a reality. As we exchanged parting words, he said, best of luck to you, Diana, and your beautiful baby girl. Take care now. Then, he walked away toward the self-checkout area to complete his purchase. Watching him leave for what felt like the last time provided a sense of closure, even though it was not the outcome I truly desired. This experience, and the emotions it stirred within me, prompted me to share my story, hoping that it might prevent others from repeating the life-altering mistake I made in the past. If my experience can resonate with even a single person, it would be a blessing worth sharing. Story 2. My name is Diana, and I am a 29-year-old woman who has been married to my 30-year-old husband for nearly 5 years. We tied the knot within a year of meeting each other and are fortunate enough to have 2 children together. He is an outstanding individual, good-looking, highly educated, and employed in a well-paying job. Throughout our relationship, he has never betrayed my trust or shown me any disrespect. Before recent events unfolded, my close friends and family members consistently reminded me how fortunate I was to have met him and how incredible he is as a partner. I used to believe wholeheartedly that we were soulmates. However, about a year ago, I made a significant mistake that changed everything. I went out with a group of friends to celebrate a birthday, and the evening quickly spiraled out of control as I consumed far too much alcohol. During the course of the night, there was a man who had been flirting with me incessantly. In a moment of weakness and poor judgment, I ended up sleeping with him. It was an exhilarating experience, and for the first time in many years, I felt a thrill that I had not experienced in a long time. However, it didn't take long for the weight of my decision to settle in. Within minutes of realizing the gravity of my mistake, I ordered a taxi to take me home. Once there, I was overcome with guilt and regret, and I tearfully confessed everything to my husband, knowing full well the pain my actions would cause him. Initially, I felt an overwhelming wave of regret and a deep sense of self-loathing. In stark contrast, he maintained a composed silence, yet his intentions were unmistakably clear. He wanted a divorce. Despite his resolute stance, my desperate pleas and heartfelt begging prompted us to consider seeking counseling as a last resort to salvage our crumbling marriage. However, during our counseling sessions, it became increasingly evident that he was emotionally disconnected. He often spent his time scrolling through his phone, seemingly indifferent to the discussions at hand. When prompted to share his feelings or to explore ways he could contribute to improving our situation, his responses were disheartening, often veering into sarcasm with comments like, divorcing a hoe, maybe, or he would direct negative remarks squarely at me. Throughout most of these sessions, he exuded an air of apathy, often remaining silent even when questions were posed or attempts were made to involve him in the conversation. I have come to recognize the mistakes I made, and for the past year, I have committed myself to doing everything within my power to preserve our marriage. This commitment has reached a point where I have even consented to engage in sexual activities that I find deeply uncomfortable, all in an effort to satisfy him. In addition, I have taken on the entire burden of household responsibilities, cleaning, cooking, and managing every chore, without any assistance from him. During his outbursts, he hurls devastating insults at me, words that can often be heard by our children from their bedrooms. There are numerous occasions where he completely ignores my presence, moving around the house as if I am invisible. Yet, paradoxically, he treats our children with affection and refrains from speaking ill of me in their presence, attempting to shield them from the turmoil of our arguments. At times, when I refuse to comply with certain demands, regardless of their nature or timing, he resorts to threats of divorce or abandonment. He frequently revisits the topic of my past infidelity, using it as a weapon to blame me for the issues that plague our relationship. He has made it abundantly clear that he views marrying me as a grave mistake, often resorting to derogatory name-calling to express his disdain. I am acutely aware that he has been communicating with other women. When I confront him about these interactions, he deftly deflects attention back to my past mistakes. Although I lack concrete evidence of him meeting someone behind my back, a persistent longing resides within me for things to return to the way they once were. On one particular occasion, when I brought up a troubling message I discovered from another woman on his phone, he forcibly took my hand and led me to the main hall, pointing at the door with a sharpness that underscored his indifference. He told me in no uncertain terms that the exit was right there if I wished to leave, emphasizing that my feelings were of little concern to him. The husband I once cherished has seemingly vanished, replaced by a man who feels so alien to me now. My love for him remains unwavering, and the thought of being with anyone else is unfathomable. I experience regret over my past actions every single day, yearning only to reunite my family and restore the bond we once shared. While I remain uncertain about the future of our marriage, I am prepared to make any sacrifices necessary to attempt to save it. In moments of reflection, I feel a strong desire to turn back the clock and undo the choices that led us to this painful juncture. I want to delve into my experiences during our therapy sessions in greater detail. Throughout those meetings, I took full responsibility for my actions, never shifting blame onto him. It was only later, upon the therapist's suggestion, that I began to consider the possibility that my husband's behavior might have contributed to my feelings of being pushed away, which ultimately played a part in my infidelity. This revelation marked a turning point in our therapy process. I am currently contemplating the idea of switching therapists, hoping for a fresh perspective that might rejuvenate our relationship, as my desire for our marriage to succeed remains fervent. In a recent update, I initiated a conversation with my husband prompted by the observations of others, who indicated that it appeared he had lost the will to make an effort and seemed intent on moving on. With a heavy heart, I approached him to explain my perspective on the entire situation, acknowledging his pain and the possibility that he might no longer wish to fight for our marriage. I made it clear that if his desire was to move forward with his life apart from me, I would accept that and let him go, stressing that my love for him endures. He responded with silence, his gaze fixed upon me, before coming over to embrace me tightly. Tears filled his eyes, a moment that brought forth my own tears as we both grappled with the weight of our shared sorrow. It was the first occasion in a considerable amount of time that I experienced a hug filled with genuine love and warmth from him, a hug that seemed to encapsulate all the emotions we had both been holding back. After what felt like an eternity of tears, where we clung to each other in a silent acknowledgement of our pain, he finally released me from his embrace and invited me to sit beside him. In that moment, he began to articulate feelings that had been boiling beneath the surface for quite some time. He openly confessed that he still loves me deeply and remains committed to our children, expressing a profound sense of care for their well-being. Yet, amid these tender sentiments, he admitted that moving past the events that had transpired between us has proven to be a monumental challenge. He explained how the memories of my actions replay in his mind like an unending film, igniting moments of intense anger that he struggles to manage. This resentment not only stems from what I had done but also from the vivid reminders that intrude upon his thoughts, making it increasingly difficult for him to find closure. As he shared these feelings, he revealed a truth that carried a weight of sadness. Over the years, he had encountered many women who expressed interest in him, presenting opportunities that could have led him astray. Despite these temptations, he emphasized that his love for me and the family we had built together always overshadowed those fleeting moments of potential pleasure. He firmly stated that he could never have inflicted upon me the pain I caused him, as his love and commitment were far too deep to allow for such betrayal. Upon hearing his words, my emotions swelled, and I found it increasingly difficult to hold back my tears. He continued, sharing his internal battle and the sense of something irreparably broken within him. He candidly disclosed that during the past few months, he had engaged in conversations with other women, yet he had consciously chosen to refrain from any physical entanglements, believing that pursuing those avenues would only complicate matters further. When I suggested that he might consider moving on from our relationship, it was evident that he felt for the first time that I truly understood the depth of his emotional turmoil, recognizing just how profoundly shattered he felt inside. While uncertainty loomed over our future together, he indicated a desire to embrace singlehood for the time being, expressing a need to explore his own life independently of me. He cautiously mentioned that reconciliation might be a possibility in the future, but for now, self-improvement was a priority he needed to focus on alone. In that moment of vulnerability, I reassured him that I would fully support his decision to sign the divorce papers if that was what he truly wanted. I made it clear that I had no intention of claiming anything from him. I wished for him to retain whatever he had brought into our marriage, devoid of any financial obligations that might burden him, including child support. Listening to him as he slowly processed his emotions moved him to tears, and he expressed a hope that one day he could find it within himself to forgive me for the hurt I had caused. He believed that taking time apart would be beneficial for both of us, allowing each of us the necessary space to reflect on our past and consider our futures. He informed me of his intention to consult with a lawyer and that he expected to present the divorce papers within the next week. I found myself in a place of reflection, realizing that I had no desire to pursue new relationships after the divorce. Instead, my genuine hope rested on the possibility that he might one day return to me, allowing us to rebuild the family we once had. The heavy burden of remorse sat heavily upon my shoulders as I wished desperately that he had never discovered the truth about that incident, feeling as though I had lost the one person I truly considered my soulmate. As I recount these events, I can't help but reflect on the passage of time and the changes life has brought into my world. The story I'm about to share took place 8 years ago in 2014. For the sake of privacy, I will use pseudonyms for everyone involved. Now at 39 years of age, I find myself happily married to my wife Jill, who is 29. We share 2 young sons, ages 1 and 3. Additionally, I have 4 older children from my previous marriage to Amber, also 39, comprising 3 boys and 1 girl aged 17, 15, 14, and 10. A significant portion of my narrative revolves around my youngest child, a 10-year-old boy whom I will refer to as Seth. To provide some context, let's rewind to about 11 years ago, a time when my wife Amber and I were already parents to 3 children and were expecting our 4th child, Seth. Life was bustling yet fulfilling. We were in a happy rhythm, filled with the joys and challenges of raising a young family. At that time, I had recently taken on additional responsibilities at work, which enabled us to purchase a house, an SUV, and a van, while also affording Amber the opportunity to be a stay-at-home mom. However, this newfound stability came at a cost. I found myself working long hours, frequently including weekends, balancing the demands of my job with my responsibilities as a husband and father. Despite the demands of my busy schedule, I consistently prioritized spending quality time with my family. I made it a point to engage in various aspects of child care and household responsibilities throughout our marriage. Amber, my wife, often conveyed her contentment with our life together, frequently expressing appreciation to others for the decisions we had made. Yet, I could sense that there were moments when she appeared overwhelmed by the weight of our family life. During those challenging times, I, alongside our parents and her sister, stepped in to offer support, ensuring that she had the opportunity to take necessary breaks and recharge. It is essential to highlight that the decision to have 4 children was mutual, with Amber playing a significant role in that choice. Following the birth of our first child, Seth, everything seemed to flow smoothly, yet life soon became busier than we had anticipated. Our household was often a whirlwind of activity, especially after Amber decided to bring a puppy into our lives, mainly at the persistent requests of our older 3 children. Our home became a bustling environment filled with the joyful noise of children, a dog, and frequent visits from extended family members. I appreciated and thrived in this lively atmosphere. As Seth grew older, a striking difference became apparent. He possessed blonde hair, bright blue eyes, and a fair complexion, which set him apart not only from me and my wife but also from our other children and both sides of our family, who all shared darker features due to our Italian heritage. While I understood that families can exhibit a range of appearances, this particular difference lingered in my mind, creating an undercurrent of doubt. Occasionally, family and friends would make lighthearted remarks, jokingly suggesting that Amber might have had an affair with the postman or someone else. Their comments were meant in jest, and we typically laughed them off, not giving them much thought. However, as time passed and Seth's features became even more distinct, I could no longer ignore the concerns that had taken root in my mind. To seek clarity in this unsettling situation, I quietly arranged for a DNA test to ascertain Seth's parentage. When the results came back, I was struck with a profound sense of loss. The test revealed that Seth was not my biological son. The pain I felt was immense, leading to a torrent of tears. While part of me had anticipated this possibility, the reality was a crushing blow. In an effort to regain some semblance of control, I reached out to the clinic to question the test's accuracy. The clinician reassured me that such errors were exceedingly rare but recommended additional testing to confirm the initial findings. Following this advice, we proceeded with a second DNA test, which unfortunately affirmed the first conclusion. The revelation left my life spiraling into chaos, and I found myself grappling with the complex dilemma of how to proceed. Understandably, many men might judge my response, but initially, my inclination was to remain passive, to do nothing and try to carry on with life as if everything was normal. I thought I could somehow reconcile this unexpected information in my mind without confronting it. For 5 weeks, I adopted this approach, maintaining a facade of normalcy. I refrained from discussing the DNA results with Amber, continuing our daily routines and even our intimate relationship. However, as the weight of the situation pressed down on me, my thoughts became an overwhelming force, prompting me to finally take action. I made an appointment with a divorce attorney, feeling the need to lay everything out and seek clarity on my next steps. During our meeting, I shared all the details of my situation, including the troubling results of the DNA tests. The attorney asked about Amber's potential reaction, and I admitted that I had not yet confronted her, as I was still unsure about whether I wanted to pursue a divorce. The attorney suggested that I might consider confronting Amber with witnesses present to hear her side of the story. However, I was resolute in my decision to end the marriage. I feared that confronting her might weaken my resolve and give her the chance to plead her case, which I was not prepared to entertain. The attorney then inquired if I had any information regarding the identity of the affair partner. I had to tell her that I was uncertain and had no leads. She advised me to investigate phone records, emails, and texts for any clues that might reveal more about the situation. She also clarified the legal implications of our marriage. Because I was married to Amber at the time Seth was born, I was legally recognized as his father, even though he was not my biological child. This meant that relief from my parental responsibilities would only be possible under specific circumstances, such as if the biological father stepped forward or if Amber initiated a paternity claim involving him. The initial devastation I felt was compounded by the realization of the legal complexities surrounding my situation, further complicating an already painful chapter of my life. With only a limited time frame to gather the necessary information for this personal investigation, I made the decision to enlist the services of a private investigator, who came highly recommended by my attorney. Within just 1 day of scrutinizing our computer and cell phone records, the private investigator successfully uncovered the identity of Amber's affair partner. The evidence he compiled took a startling direction, revealing that the affair had commenced on one of the largest dating sites available at the time. Amber had created a profile under the alias Elsa25, in which she falsely represented herself as single, claimed to have no children, and indicated that she was seeking casual encounters. This profile remained active on the dating site, despite the fact that all her pictures had been taken down. As the private investigator continued his work, it became evident that Amber had been engaging in extensive messaging with multiple men on the platform for nearly 3 months. The nature of these interactions was particularly disheartening. While most of her conversations were lighthearted and involved mild flirting, one stood out. The man with whom she ultimately engaged in the affair, referred to here as Bob. He lived 23 miles away and worked the 3:11 p.m. shift at a local factory, which conveniently aligned with Amber's availability during the day for communication and their clandestine meetings at his apartment. All their exchanges were conducted through the dating site, and it is important to note that Bob bore a striking resemblance to other individuals in Amber's life. In an attempt to further distance herself from being tracked, Amber had informed Bob that she did not possess a mobile phone, claiming it was lost and had yet to be replaced. From the messages exchanged, it became apparent that after their third date, Amber abruptly severed all communication with Bob, despite his continued attempts to reach out. Eventually, he ceased messaging her, unaware that Amber had set up notifications for new messages on the dating site to be sent to a Yahoo email account that she rarely if ever checked. This account remained signed in, so when the investigator performed a standard check on Yahoo, the entire email history appeared on the screen, revealing the extent of her activities. The decision to hire this investigative professional was undoubtedly a sound financial investment, amounting to $950. The evidence he uncovered, combined with the results of a paternity DNA test, equipped me with all the documentation necessary to file for an at-fault divorce. I promptly authorized my attorney to move forward with the legal proceedings. My plan was to serve Amber with divorce papers in the presence of both our parents. While some might argue that this approach was less confrontational, I had reached a point where trust in my wife was irrevocably damaged. I was deeply concerned about her potential for irrational behavior or making unfounded accusations if we were to confront this issue alone. Prior to this meeting, I had informed my parents of the situation to prepare them, ensuring they would not be caught off guard and could provide me with the support I anticipated I would need. The atmosphere in the room was highly charged, and my nerves teetered on the edge of unraveling, yet I managed to maintain my composure. I began by presenting the DNA test results, followed by the evidence in the form of printed copies of significant messages exchanged between Amber and Bob. It was clear that both sets of parents were visibly affected. The shock and distress on their faces mirrored my own emotions as they came to grasp the gravity of the situation. Amber's demeanor shifted as well. She looked at me with a blank, dazed expression, a sorrowful and apologetic look washing over her face. As tears streamed down her cheeks, I sensed that she was experiencing a profound emotional breakdown, something that resembled post-traumatic stress disorder, and her behavior changed noticeably in the days that followed. As the tension in the room began to ease, Amber expressed deep sorrow and sought my forgiveness, professing that she loved me and our family more than anything. I told her that I forgave her, but then I proceeded to hand her a separation agreement, outlining my wish for a legal separation lasting 6 months. I suggested that she stay with her parents for the next 2 weeks to allow both of us some space for contemplation. I made it clear that after this initial period, she could return to our home to finalize the legal separation, though I insisted that one of my parents would be present at all times, as my trust in her had been irrevocably shattered. Following this, I handed her the divorce agreement and informed her that she would need to engage a lawyer. This revelation prompted a wave of inconsolable distress from her. Her mother immediately inquired whether there was any way to avert the divorce, to which I resolutely responded with a firm no. Amber's mother then argued that although her daughter's actions were indeed grievous, they did not warrant the end of what was otherwise a great marriage, nor the disruption of our family. I countered this by stating bluntly that Amber had cheated, had had another man's baby, and had deceived me for over 2 years. The situation reached an undeniable climax when they finally departed, allowing us to move forward with the separation process. My wife, during this tumultuous time, repeatedly pleaded with me, expressing her deep desire for us not to proceed with the divorce. It was a heart-wrenching scene, with her making multiple appeals each day, hoping to sway my decision and mend the fractures in our relationship. Meanwhile, throughout this challenging separation period, my attorney managed to reach out to Bob, the man involved in the affair. Bob conveyed his sincere remorse, asserting that he had no prior knowledge of Elsa, my wife, being married. He claimed that he had never intended to disrupt a family and revealed that he was grappling with significant financial difficulties, which rendered him unable to support a child. This revelation made it clear that he had no plans to accept any paternal responsibilities associated with the affair. In a twist of irony, Amber's sister shared some troubling insights with me. According to her, Amber had justified her actions by claiming that she had created the dating profile simply to attract attention from other men, never intending to betray me. Amber had confided that she felt insecure about her appearance following the weight gain that accompanied the birth of our 3 children. She was seeking validation, wanting to know if other men still found her attractive. Throughout our marriage, I had never criticized her appearance. In fact, I made it a point to reassure her of her beauty because, in my eyes, she truly was stunning. Fast forward 8 months, and the legal proceedings culminated with the official conclusion of our divorce. My attorney put forth a request for an equal division of assets, thoughtfully excluding alimony from the settlement based on Amber's infidelity and her affair. Child support was only sought for our 3 biological children, yet there lingered the possibility that the judge could determine I should also provide support for Seth, the child born from the affair, given that I was legally recognized as his father. Ultimately, the judge ruled that I would indeed be responsible for child support payments for Seth. In a small measure of relief, alimony was removed from the settlement due to Amber's betrayal and the presence of the child resulting from the affair. I was awarded the family home as part of the settlement, which represented a significant victory in this emotionally draining battle, but Amber was granted 51% primary custody of our children. After the judge delivered her ruling, she opened the floor for any questions or comments. Amber seized the moment to reiterate her remorse, emphasizing her love for me and expressing her desire for us to potentially reconnect in the future. I took my turn to address the judge, thanking her for her considered verdict and the opportunity to speak. As I articulated my thoughts, I pointed out what I perceived as an unfair bias in our state's family court system, particularly against men in situations like mine. I could not fathom how a woman could cheat, have a child with another man while deceiving her husband, yet still be awarded primary custody of the children they had together. I was left financially responsible for a child who was not biologically mine. The judge listened attentively to my concerns and acknowledged my perspective, explaining that her decisions consistently prioritized the welfare of the children involved. She clarified that, in this particular case, it was deemed in the best interest of the child for me to continue holding the legal status of Seth's father. The judge commended my character, describing me as a good man who deserved to be involved in his life. This consideration factored into her decision to grant me 49% custody and allow me to retain the family home. Importantly, the judge noted that the court could only absolve me of my parental responsibilities if the biological father voluntarily came forward and assumed those duties. If that were to occur, there would be a comprehensive assessment of the biological father's mental and financial fitness before any decisions were made. Feeling a sense of urgency, I informed the judge that I had already submitted the biological father's name and address to the court. I inquired whether this information would be sufficient to initiate a court order for a DNA test, hoping to clarify the situation surrounding Seth's paternity. The judge responded that such matters fell into the civil court domain and that the court typically refrained from intervening in this way. She noted that either my ex-wife or I would need to convince the biological father to step forward voluntarily, or alternatively, my ex-wife could pursue a paternity lawsuit against him. At this juncture, Amber's attorney interjected, relaying her client's hesitance to involve another man in Seth's life. Her attorney asserted that Seth already had a wonderful father in me, further complicating the emotional landscape of an already convoluted situation. As I concluded my statement, I couldn't shake the distinct impression that everyone present in the courtroom was essentially communicating a collective sentiment of, "Tough luck, deal with it." It was a frustrating realization, one that underscored the seriousness of the situation I found myself in. I wanted to highlight this courtroom exchange as a cautionary tale for any man contemplating marriage. It is crucial to conduct thorough research into the family laws relevant to your state before making such a significant commitment. The hearing came to a close, and just like that, I was officially divorced. Following the divorce, I was determined to fulfill my child support obligations diligently. My focus remained steadfast on being the best father I could possibly be to all of my children, including my son Seth. Despite the challenging circumstances surrounding our family's dynamics, I treated Seth no differently than my other children. He was, after all, my son, and I was the only father he had ever known. My love for him was unwavering, and I made it a priority to ensure he felt valued and supported. A few years down the line, I met Jill. As our relationship blossomed, we decided to marry and were soon blessed with 2 more boys. This new chapter in my life brought my total number of children to 6, a dynamic that fills me with joy and gratitude. Every day, I express my appreciation to the Lord for blessing me with the opportunity to raise such a wonderful group of children. I am equally thankful for Jill, who entered my life at the perfect moment, bringing love and stability when I needed it most. As for my ex-wife Amber, I had already forgiven her long before. Since our divorce, she has shifted her focus primarily towards being a devoted mother and caring for her elderly parents. Life has not been easy for her. She has experienced significant changes, including gaining a considerable amount of weight and receiving a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes, which now requires her to manage her health with daily medication. Before my relationship with Jill became serious, Amber attempted multiple times to rekindle what we once had. She even resorted to trying to manipulate our children into persuading me to return to her. I recognized this tactic for what it was and quickly put a firm stop to it. Over the years, Amber has expressed her remorse numerous times, openly acknowledging that the affair was one of the worst mistakes of her life. Thankfully, we have now reached a point of mutual respect, allowing us to co-parent effectively. Looking ahead, Amber plans to enroll in a nursing program to become a licensed practical nurse, LPN. This decision is pivotal for her, as she will need to establish a stable source of income once the child support payments begin to expire in a few years, coinciding with our children reaching adulthood at the age of 18. Despite still driving the 11-year-old van she received as part of the divorce settlement, it has become increasingly clear that it will soon require replacement. Throughout these years, Amber has dated a few older men. However, none of these relationships developed into anything serious. I can only imagine how challenging it must be for a woman with 4 children to navigate the dating landscape. In conclusion, I wanted to share this reflection with the hope that it resonates with those considering marriage. Take a moment to pause, gather your thoughts, and ensure you have a supportive partner by your side. Familiarizing yourself with the family laws in your state is an essential step that could make all the difference in your future.
Don't forget to subscribe, like, and click on the little bell icon for notifications of new stories.